Fox News Alert House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler announcing just moments ago that the DOJ has agreed to release some of the underlying evidence used by Robert Mueller in his investigation into possible obstruction of justice. This as critics accuse Democrats of resorting to partisan theatrics. The House Judiciary Committee starting a series of hearings this week that they're calling Lessons from the Mueller Report. Today's star witness, former White House counsel to Richard Nixon, John Dean. Democrats are trying to draw the public's attention to the allegation that President Trump sought to obstruct a federal investigation. President Trump blasting the hearing, tweeting, "For 2 years, all the Democrats talked about was the Mueller report because they knew that it was loaded up with 13 angry Democrat Trump haters, later increased to 18. But despite the bias, when the report came out, the findings were no collusion and facts that led to no obstruction. The Dems were devastated after all this time and money spent, $40 million. The Mueller report was a disaster for them, but they want a redo or a do-over. They are even bringing in sleazebag attorney John Dean. Sorry, no do-overs. Go back to work." Here's John Dean previewing what he'll say today.
I'm clearly not a fact witness, but I hope I can give them some context and show them how strikingly like Watergate what we're seeing now and as reported in the Mueller report is. Nixon was hands-on very early, is just like Trump, hands-on very early. The firing of Comey was certainly not dissimilar from some of the actions that Nixon took.
David, do you think Americans are going to focus a lot on this testimony? I mean, they use kind of the Wayback Machine to go find someone.
If they want to focus on this testimony, all they have to do is turn on CNN because the guy's on like 10 times a day. Dean is. So the point is that poor Jerry Nadler looks pretty pathetic right now. I mean, he keeps getting shot down. He wanted to do impeachment. He wanted to subpoena and then get some kind of charge against Bill Barr for not answering the subpoena. And he either gets shot down by Pelosi or somebody else. I mean, he really can't get what he wants.
Hey, I want to get back to the Nadler news right now because it's continuing to cook. So just moments ago, Representative Doug Collins, Republican of Georgia, put this statement out about the Justice Department and turning over more information. He says the DOJ has yet again offered accommodations to House Democrats, and I am glad Chairman Nadler, for the first time in months, has finally met them at the negotiating table. Today's a good faith provision from the administration, furthering debunks claims that the White House is stonewalling Congress, and it goes on. Again, that is Representative Doug Collins. Really interesting. So you're seeing some negotiating. You're seeing a back off right now from holding William Barr in contempt of Congress or anybody else. Criminal contempt. And putting that in abeyance while they work on getting some of these further documents.
Again, in politics, you're judged on the basis of your success. Whether it's right or wrong is irrelevant to the politicians. And so far, Jerry Nadler hasn't had a lot of success. I mean, he's head of one of the most powerful committees in Congress, the Judiciary Committee. As I mentioned before, he was desperate to get impeachment. He was forced to pull back on that by Nancy Pelosi. Now he's forced to pull back on this. I mean, I just wonder where all this is going. Let's face it, the bottom line here with regard to Attorney General Barr, they want to do everything they can to try to discredit Barr so that when he comes out with his report on the origin of the Russia investigation, it'll be shot down.
Jessica?
I think it's a little early to be judging Jerry Nadler's tenure here. I mean, he only took control of the committee 6 months ago, and he has John Dean coming in today. He says that Bob Mueller is going to testify. He said that last Wednesday, that he expects him to be in the next couple of weeks. That will certainly be a boon for those impeachment aficionados. And you are right that he...
What should Democrats ask Bob Mueller?
Well, Bob Mueller made it clear when he came out last week that he's not going to say anything more that's within the text.
He certainly did, and I believe him.
My read on all of this is that there are two important things going on right now. Watching the public polling and perception of how much people want
So it's all for
impeachment.
theatrics. There's no leading question that they should ask him? No. Well, not leading, but top question?
Oh, the top questions will certainly be about obstruction of justice.
And when he doesn't answer, what do you do?
Well, he will answer, at least reading what it is. So that's why I was saying there's polling and then there's also on-camera evidence. We know how powerful it is to actually see people talking about this. Even what happened with Bob Mueller last week, he didn't tell us anything new, but seeing him on camera say, if I had the confidence to tell you that the president did not commit a crime, I would have done that.
All right, so I'm going to try that with my kids, Kennedy. You're going to do this with your daughters. Look at mommy. Yeah. I said no. Yeah. And then they run off and do whatever.
Are you exactly right?
But I mean, that sounds
okay.
But then why, if being
that
on
the
camera
way a
doesn't
man
matter,
looks on camera would change the facts.
It's not about changing the facts. I mean, we sit here on camera all day, and there are people who are better at it than others because of how they communicate.
Yeah, but if you just tell the truth, that's the only job we have.
But it's not about, because people didn't, as you say all the time, people didn't read the report. People listened to their favorite pundits who spun a story the way that they wanted it.
Jerry Nadler admitted that he didn't read the report. He's the head of the House Judiciary Committee.
I don't remember
he's the chairman. Absolutely.
He said, I did not read the Mueller report.
Can I ask a quick question? Because I did read the report. So what part of it in there do you think that if he read it out loud would change public opinion or would make it seem as if the president needs to be impeached?
I think that if he went through the 10 separate incidences that could qualify as obstruction of justice, as well as the OLC guidelines about how he wasn't going to be taking that on and making a decision about that would influence public opinion.
Just reading the exact same words.
Well, he has said that he's not going to do more than that.
So you're saying just reading the same words on camera would change
things? Well, I think there are some inconsistencies between what he said and
what Bill Barr said,
William
for
Barr
sure.
said. Yes, and I think that's a valid question to have one of them or both of them on the record to reconcile that, because it seems difficult for both those things to be true at the same. But there are certainly questions for Robert Mueller. And if you're worried that he's just going to say, I already submitted my report, then what's the point of having him? But I want to talk about John Dean a little bit, because John Dean is essentially a never-Trumper. And if you want someone who opposes the president but has a little bit more intellectual heft, then why don't you have Alyssa Milano go and testify before the committee? Because John Dean isn't bringing anything new, and I know people are so lazy. They would love to make these simple comparisons between Watergate and what's happening right now. The difference with Watergate, and John Dean should point this out, it wasn't just Nixon. It was everyone around him. So if you have the president going, let's fire Comey. Jared, go talk to Sessions. Have Sessions resign. You know, it's like, and that didn't happen. You didn't have people around him.
John Dean made the point that you're making too substantively. He said, clearly, I'm not a fact witness.
Bingo. I mean, he's even saying, don't bother.
They bring me in to say how your hair got styled, and I said, well, I actually wasn't there, and I can't do it.
Yeah.
But they bring me in anyway.
I just think it's interesting that if we read the same 10 points and it's a dramatic reading of some sort, that it sways things.
It's obviously going to have more color than just... told Don Jr.
So what you want is a bedtime reader.
No, I have audiobooks for that. No, that's not what I'm talking about. It's not about being irrespective of that.
I want a viral moment. I just want this to go viral. That'll change the facts. But then it'll be on the YouTube.
If you're imitating me, I'm insulted.
No. I'm not imitating you. I'm just saying, that's the mentality.
It is not the mentality.
Kirsten Gillibrand mentality.
It is the mentality that
or you want to play beer pong
if
and dance around
sipping a shot.
If this highly respected man spent 2 years looking into this, built a team, he was unassailable from honest brokers on both sides, right? His career.
And had a 30-year friendship with the AG currently.
That having him testify and getting as much information as you can out of him that adds color to the report, which many people have not read.
Can I just say one thing about the problem
you want
with
him
Mueller?
to read it in a different intonation? Well, he was Section 245.
No matter what he says, hold on. No matter
one at a time. Go, David.
No matter what he says, the biggest hit against Mueller, and you're right, he was respected by Andy McCarthy, for goodness sake. So, a critic of a lot of what's been going on with the impeachment push. No matter what he says, his idea of it is the job of the prosecutor to find you innocent, not to find you guilty. That was what turned people against him in the public eye. We have a very basic foundation to our judicial system that you're innocent until proven guilty, and if the prosecutor doesn't have evidence that you're guilty, then he should shut up. And he didn't. All of those 10 points that you were mentioning, none of them proved guilt. And that's what a prosecutor's supposed to do.
I agree with what you're saying about that. You want them, they're not supposed to color it in. But I also agree with your idea that if we had him there and he could answer questions, it could be beneficial to all sides.
Wouldn't hurt.
I just think that you and I, looking at the same 2 points, don't see the same thing. And it's interesting that, in my mind, that you think if he sits there and reads those same points that we've looked at, that it would sway public opinion. But you're not saying that. You're saying that you want to drill down on those 10
Obviously, there's going to be more to it, but I do think it's important for the creator of the document to be held accountable for that. And even we saw the impact
from the press.
We saw the impact of even that 10-minute press conference last week, and how clear he was, saying that if he could have said definitively the president did not commit a crime, he would have.
But it really wasn't a press conference. It was a place for him to go and read his statement. And Kennedy brings up a good point. If you take questions, then that changes the game. He had some players in the room that could have asked. Yeah, but we do a job differently than Congress does. I mean, quite plain and simple. Our job is different. And so our questions...
By the way, a lot of Republicans want him to appear so that they can ask him questions that will be very critical about his whole idea of what his job was, whether his job was to prove innocence or guilt.
That's a good question.
I agree. Wow. I think we'd love to see him.